the icebreaker, and we'll go ahead and get started.
And we could, just so I have time, I could start with the preamble of like what dialogues in Schoolhouse is while people are rolling in, or do you want to even wait on that one a little bit?
Yeah, I can maybe give a quick one, Sal, or yes, I mean,
Oh, yeah, you
run
start,
it
Matt.
and then
That
pass
that
it over
yeah.
to you. Sounds good. Cool. Danny, whenever you're ready to send us into the room, we're good to go.
I think you're live because it says live 043 there next to your name. But
there we are. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. Before we get started on this conversation about civil discourse on college campuses, we'd ask that you share a quick icebreaker with us. Please share your name, state and country you're calling from, and in a one-word answer, how does a conversation with someone who disagrees with you make you feel? Right? Maybe it's curious or nervous or open. Would love for that to be just a little thought starter for folks as we wait for everyone to join. Awesome. Seeing some great responses in the chat, and as it's 5:03 Eastern time, let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us in today's conversation about civil discourse on college campuses, presented by Schoolhouse and our incredible college partners. My name is Matt Wu. I'm the COO and president of Schoolhouse, and I'm thrilled to be your host for this very timely and important discussion. We're joined today by the deans of admissions from several really prestigious universities. We have Jessica Marinaccio from Columbia University, Jim Nomdorf from the University of Chicago, Logan Powell from Brown University, and Stu Schmill from MIT. And then, of course, we have Sal Khan, our founder of both Khan Academy and Schoolhouse, who will be guiding today's session. Together, this group of leaders in education will explore how students can engage in meaningful conversation on complex issues, and also share why civil discourse matters now more than ever. This event is inspired by our Dialogues program, a new program at Schoolhouse where high school students engage in these one-on-one Zoom conversations with peers who hold different perspectives on often controversial topics. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Schoolhouse, we are a nonprofit that offers free online peer-to-peer tutoring. Students join Schoolhouse for SAT prep, for academic support, and now for dialogues. And all of this really fits under our broader mission to connect the world through learning. Today, we're very proud to support a vibrant global community of over 18,000 volunteer tutors and 140,000 learners from across 180 countries. And with that, I'm honored to turn things over to Sal to help kick us off for today's conversation.
Great, thanks, Matt. Well, I'm honored to be here with these great folks, and I apologize to everyone. I'm in an airport. This was unexpected, but I have to take a flight. No family emergency. It's good stuff. But I just want to open up with almost I would say it's a softball question, but I suspect there's actually a little bit more nuance here. I'd love all of you admissions leaders to kind of just why does civil discourse matter to folks on your why should it matter to high school students? Irrespective of college admissions, why does it matter on campus? Why does it matter in life? Is it really to kind of avoid the worst of sometimes we see polarization and conversations breaking down, or do you see other aspects of it? We could just go. I'll go in order on my screen. Stu seems to be first on my screen, so I'll start with you, Stu.
Very simple answer. Civil discourse. It is how you learn. Being open to hearing other views is the only way to sharpen your own. And it's what we do at college campuses is we try to educate, and what students should be trying to do is to learn. And that's the best way to do it.
Jessica?
I think what I'll do is I'll add to what Stu said. So, I do agree that I think the goal of what we're doing at the college level in higher education is we're really trying to allow students to wrestle with big questions and learn from each other and look through different lenses and learn ideas that are unfamiliar to them so that they can be really prepared to go into the world, which is full of difference and full of new things that you're not necessarily prepared for. But how do you build those skills to question and to be creative and to navigate through that so that you can make the most of your time in college, certainly, but your time out of college to really bring about positive change to the world. And in order to do that, you need to understand civilly other people.
Jim?
So, you Chicago, we're big on, free speech in general, but it's about being open to ideas. I mean, some of the most, everybody used to think the world was flat, and then all of a sudden, new people came along, and they may have killed some of those very first people who said, no, the world is round, or this, the Earth orbits around the sun. But not to take Stu's, the MIT world, but almost every breakthrough relied on somebody disagreeing with what everybody else was saying. And that's how you make progress. It is how you learn, but it's also what our schools are hoping to achieve from a research standpoint, or just the furthering of knowledge. And so I think it's critical to who we are as research universities, as well as what we do for our students.
Logan?
I would say everything that my wonderful colleagues have just said. So it's tough going last on this one, but I will say, and this is something that I see personally every day here in Providence, Rhode Island, and at Brown University. Having differences of opinion and talking to people about those differences just makes life more interesting. And I'll give you an example. I walk to work every day. My office here at Brown is in downtown, and I live in downtown Providence. I walk to work every day, and I see someone every single day who does not work at Brown. He works in a very, very different field. He and I have nothing in common, and we disagree about so many things, but we've actually become really good friends because we can talk through a lot of those differences. And even though we totally disagree about probably a majority of the things that are going on, in the country or in the world and how to solve them, he and I have become great friends. And it just makes life more interesting to have people who come from different perspectives and different backgrounds. And I truly cherish that. Wouldn't trade it for anything.
And let's now, I'll go in reverse order. So I'm gonna bounce back to you, Logan. I mean, everything everyone said makes sense. Where would you say your campus or your sense of where college campuses are on that? If a 10 is perfect harmony, people with strong disagreement, it's kind of what you described with your friend as a 10, right? And we all can imagine what a 1 looks like. It's where are we, and what historically have campuses done to foster this type of dialogue, being able to surface diverse opinions, but making people comfortable, discussing it. And what are y'all doing, above and beyond? I'll talk more about dialogues and admissions, but just on the campus, what are y'all doing to foster this type of conversation?
Right. Yeah, it's a great question, Sal. So, I think we all aspire to be a 10, and there are times where it feels like that. And there are times it feels like it's maybe a number lower than that. But I think aspirationally, we're always searching for what you just described as, sort of that platonic ideal. I think what we all have to do, and I'll just speak only for Brown here, I think what we do is very explicitly bring people together from different perspectives and set some ground rules for what the dialogue looks like, to say, this is going to be respectful. You can disagree, but there are ways to express that disagreement. And it's not by shouting the person down or not giving them a platform. There should be some rules of the road. The dialogue should be respectful. It should be open. And we should be able to hear others speak, and they should be able to, to express their thoughts and opinions always in a respectful way, because you can disagree respectfully. And so I think it's really important for us as a university to invite that kind of civil disagreement and to provide a platform for speakers who our students may not normally see in their day-to-day lives, and to invite speakers who they may really disagree with, but to allow them the opportunity to hear those perspectives and to share their own. So I think it has to be, it has to be purposeful, Sal. I think that's really the key, and it's something that we've done for a number of years now, and we'll continue to do.
Yep. Jim?
So Sal, something you said, when you said make students feel comfortable, and I was actually going to interrupt you and say, no, we actually want them to be a little uncomfortable. We want them to be unsettled, to have to meet people that, are going to be like, I never thought about that. And all of my peers here, we're all in this group called STARS, which is Small Town and Rural Students, and we've been bringing rural students to our campuses. And I have to tell you, one of the things I love every year is in the summer when we've got like a gaggle of rural students on campus, and at the same time I have a bunch of kids from like private schools on the coasts, and they'll all get together, and you can see that the interactions. And every year I laugh because some student will say something to the effect of, "I've never met a Republican before," or "I've never met a Democrat before." Like they've just never been exposed to these, to other views, and so that's the joyous part of the learning.
And where are you think on that journey of like this, as Logan, the platonic ideal of the 10 and everyone?
We kind of inculcate the kids when they get to UChicago every year. So I'd say maybe we're at an 8 if we're on most days, and sometimes you're at a 5 and sometimes you're at a 10. I think most of us kind of have that vacillation. It's where do you end? Where are you most days is a tougher question. Jessica?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to kind of maybe, first of all, I agree, just broad-based with Jim talking about that. So there needs to be some discomfort in education. I always say that I don't think that a really good education is actually safe. I mean, you're physically safe, but it's not safe in terms of you know everything already, and you feel very, very comfortable. And it's pushing out of a comfort zone and into discomfort, and that is what the world is, and again, what we're trying to kind of prepare people for. But I want to expand maybe a little bit upon like how do we kind of create these communities that Logan talked a little bit about, and he used a word that was it's purposeful. He focused a little bit more on on campuses, but really in the admissions process, I think one of the things that we focus on in order to successfully create these communities where civil discourse is important and valued is to look for those qualities in high school students already. And so, what have they exhibited? Students in secondary school or high school, they're not fully formed people yet. I mean, we want to influence them and help to see who they're going to be. But they have an inclination to already start to do that. They see value in those differences of opinions. They lift up people, not put people down. They're described in recommendations as the person who stays afterwards to help that person who's struggling a little bit, or who always questions why, and in kind of not an argumentative way, but in a questioning, supportive way, really wanting to have that knowledge that Stu was referencing as well. And so if we're guided by those qualities from the very beginning, when we're creating that purposeful class that Logan was talking about, you automatically have a group of people who are committed to that or leaning toward that if guided and supported appropriately when they're in college. And so that really, I think, helps give that full base to the beginning of your college experience where it can be expanded.
Yeah, and I want to pick up on that thread, but I'll let Stu finish this question, and then we're going to go into that one.
So, where do I think MIT is? I think it depends on the domain. So, Jim mentioned the research lab. I think we're a 10 out of 10. You get students tossing around ideas as to what to test and what to try, and I think those are very open, respectful, and those lead to big things. On my staff, we're thinking about strategies and things like that, and we can openly disagree with each other and have good discussions and come out better for that. Universities, I think, sometimes are thought of as being bubbles that are a part of society, though, and I don't think we're as apart from society as people think. And I do think society in general, in some domains, political domains, or at least on topics that tend to get politicized, there is less dialogue that happens. And I think that's what we're trying to work on. I think our universities are trying to do better at that. I think our society needs to do better at that. And I think, Sal, this is why dialogues exists, to try to improve that societally, right? And this is, I think, an outcome of the way students consume information, the way people, not students, because I don't want to pin this only on students and young people, because this is a societal issue. How you consume information, if you do it, this way, and you only see certain feeds, you're going to believe certain things, and the divide is going to grow. So I think it's a societal issue, and I think we do need to try to figure out how to reclaim that.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people listening might say, oh, they're saying nice things, but I've seen stuff on the news, those look like moments of a 2 or a 3, maybe at best. But I think, being an observer, an outside observer, I think what the answer is, there are, and probably certain points in history tend to lead to some inflection points where you sometimes hit 2s or 3s, but those are what get all the press. And no one's going to do a national news story on a Republican and Democrat kid coming to agreement on on some policy or something. That's not going to make anyone's headlines. Jessica, I'll start with you on you already started on ways that you try to pick up on how civil someone might be with other people, maybe people that they disagree with. What other signals do you look for? And I'll throw in a little bit of, what I think a lot of people feel as they go through the college admissions process. My oldest he's a rising junior, so we're starting to think about it. And I meet some families that are kind of going through it, and I think they're doing it the right way. I meet other families that, if I'm honest, are very cynical about it. They treat it as a game, and they seem like they're kind of good at gaming too. So tell how do you feel like you're getting good signals, even before dialogues, and what are you hoping from something like dialogues?
Yeah. It's really interesting, because I think that some people who think of it as a game may assume that it's kind of a formulistic kind of process, or that the hook kind of conversation that people have. But it really is what we do is very holistic, and holistic, by its definition, is whole person and multifaceted and not formulistic in terms of understanding people. But what that does allow us to do, all those pieces to a puzzle that comes through reading an application that forms that picture of who a student is, which is how I kind of describe holistic admissions. You're not just saying, are you smart? Have you achieved a lot? Do you have all of these awards? Do you have all of these titles? It's who are you within all of that? And those are the questions that we're delving into. Those are what we're talking about when we're reading the recommendations, the short answer questions that schools choose to, in their supplement, choose to ask, which is very telling about schools and what they value, and the conversations, the qualities that guide us. We're guided at Columbia by, a list of personal characteristics that have come from our community, have come from our university leadership, have come from conversations with faculty saying what makes a successful Columbian student. And none of those are high testers, though we have them, but straight A students who have taken so many different hard courses. They're qualities, right? So they are that creativity, there are that kindness. And when we do a review in committee and we look at someone who is maybe amazing in so many ways, the last question that we ask at Columbia before we move on is, are they a nice person? And that speaks to that civil discourse that we're talking about there, because you're a nice person listens and has other qualities like that creativity and commitment. And Schoolhouse and dialogues will allow us another piece of information in order to effectively understand those qualities in a deeper way. More information in order to describe those to us is always better. It's a great way to do it.
No, that makes sense. Jim? Nice. Yeah.
Sure. So I'm very excited about dialogues for the exact same reason that Jessica just lined up. I would say, the things we see in the application, like teachers recs, are so helpful, because you can imagine that at our schools, these are kids who are all very smart, and they might be the first one to pick up a new idea. And there are kids who, when they're first, they are, oh yes, why are the rest of you so stupid? That's one kind of a student. The other kind of student is, hey, have you thought of it this way? Did you look at it? And they try to help their peers. And you want kids who are going to raise all boats, who are going to raise the learning on your campus. And, like another example would be, extracurriculars. For God's sakes, the last thing I want on campus is a student who has to be, is a 1,800 students who all have to be president of everything. Like you go to meetings where everybody wants to be in charge every once in a while, and you know what it's like to try and get something done. So these are the kind of attributes I think we have to look for, and that I'm excited that I hope Dialogues will provide.
Yeah, Logan, and I'll double click a little bit. I mean, both Jessica and Jim have talked already about, look, you're looking at recommendations, you're looking at the kid who's nice, who's helpful, and you're getting the essays, you're getting the recommendations. But I'll still play a little bit of that cynical student or parent in their head of like, well, can you do you feel that you can kind of pull out authenticity from someone who they're here, they watch a webinar like this and like, okay, I have to look nice, I have to look like I'm the kid that's helping. Do you have a good detector for that?
I think we do, Sal. I think it's in part because one of the things that sometimes elicits some criticism about, I'll speak only about Brown, is our application is, probably somewhat lengthy compared to the national average. We ask a lot of questions. We have, the standard application, but we also have a pretty lengthy supplement. And it's there for a reason. We don't just want more words. We want to see some consistency of theme. We want to see that, the answers that a student offers us in their essays are similar to the ways that they're described by their teachers, or the ways that they may present themselves in, for us, a video introduction as an example. And so we start to see that thread, kind of throughout the application. And so I'll give you a quick example, Sal. We have a question in our supplement, and I'll just paraphrase it, that goes, what brings you joy? And we love this question because we want to know what sparks joy for a student, and very often it's creating moments of joy, opportunities for joy for others. But it's very often these moments that we're talking about. I would say the sort of the consistent theme we see there, and I hope I'm not giving away too much of what we look for in the process, but one of the things that always stands out to us is that the source of joy that resonates with us the most is when the student is talking about being with others. And it can be people who are similar or different, but joy is best when shared. And so we see that throughout the application, and the teachers talk about it and the student talks about it. And so it's that consistency that really helps us, feel quite confident that that student is who we think they are.
Yeah. And Stu, I know MIT has a similar kind of like, what do you like to do for fun type of question. Same question, but I'll keep pushing on this, because I think there are a lot of people who get cynical about the process. What brings someone joy might be, I like to watch Gossip Girl and eat chocolate cake, but they feel like I can't write that down on my college application. I have to say I like, making AI models and, feeding the poor. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So yeah.
Yep. Right. Yeah. I'm sure we get those pressures. I mean, we understand those pressures. And similarly, we have multiple streams where we're getting data on students, so we sort of corroborate those. But I definitely get the sense of cynicism. Some of that comes from a fear that other people are going to be doing something, are going to game it, and if I don't, is that a problem? But my experience is that most of our applicants play it straight and answer our questions authentically. I think that's true. We definitely know that that's not universally true. There are students who are trying to tell us what they think we want to hear. The thing that is a problem about that, though, is that more often than not, I think the advice that students wind up getting is really wrong. This actually happened to me this weekend. I was off. I was down on Cape Cod, and I was just kind of chatting with somebody, and he was telling me his view on how college admissions works. And I think he knew what I did for a living, but it didn't matter because he had his view on this. Totally off base, totally wrong. But anybody who he's going to advise on this, he's going to say, hey, do X, Y, and Z, and it'd be totally wrong. I mean, it's sort of like the notion of there's this meme that goes around, you have to take every advanced course that your high school offers. That's a very common theme. I've had friends of mine advise my own kids, oh, you've got to take, if you don't take AP physics, forget it, you're never going to get into college. If you don't take AP history, you're never going to get into college. And those things are just not true. And so I think kids who try to game things often go off in the wrong direction and they don't actually serve themselves. Best advice for anybody, play it straight. There's a lot of great schools out there in the world. You're going to be fine getting into one of them. So I don't know. I don't think this is such a widespread issue, other than for kids who get caught up in having pressurized parents or counselors telling them, giving them bad advice.
Sal, could I?
No, I could. Oh yeah, absolutely, Jessica.
Just really quickly. I mean, I think when I was listening to Stu, I mean, we really understand 17 and 18-year-olds, and we understand, we're in schools. We all have been in education for a really long time, and we're looking for really talented, real 17-year-old kids. And that means someone. There's no way, in an activities list when people are saying, I do this 10 hours a week, and then you add it up, and it's way more than what you can possibly do in a week or in a full-time job times 2, and that we're looking for that. We're not looking for machines. And if you come off as like a machine who is just kind of churning out all of this stuff, but there's no human element to it, we can't get a sense of really what you would be like in that classroom, which is what we're trying to do to form that class. And I think that will actually takes away from your chances really more than helps. We want very bright, very talented, creative people who will be in our community, but who are real 17-year-old students.
Yep, and I'll just say, I consider it was a blessing when I applied to college many years ago that I was super naive about it. I didn't even really understand how competitive it was. And I just kind of I was just myself on it. And I was telling my wife recently, and then she kind of did the same thing because she also kind of came from a community that didn't send a lot of folks to elite universities, that was such a blessing because now, I get the benefit of talking to folks like y'all, and I realize I did the exact right thing back in the mid 90s, versus I see a lot of kids out here in Silicon Valley or on the coast who are they get consultants. The consultants stress everyone out. They sometimes if they're a family friend, I offer to review their essays. I'm like, this isn't you. Like, this is something else. Like, what you do this, and you're hilarious. Where's your sense of humor in this thing? Anyway, so I completely agree. But anyway, I've asked enough questions. I could ask y'all questions all day. Matt, why don't we open it up to the audience? And if I'm looking away, it's just to make sure I don't miss my plane. But I'm paying close attention. But Matt, I'll hand it off to you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Sal, and thank you everyone for all those really insightful thoughts and comments. We're going to open up the chat now. So for those in the audience, feel free to add your questions into the chat, and we'll cherry pick ones that we will ask each of our deans to answer. So go ahead and ask away.
While you're waiting, Matt, I was just going to know as soon as you have one, just throw it. But I thought, I hate dead silence. Silence drives me crazy. I don't know if you guys do. And that is, it's funny. Like sometimes when all of a sudden we say we like things, kids go out and do lots of them. And quite honestly, if it's like community service or it's like doing good deeds, well, even if they're not doing them for the right reasons, I'm glad that they're doing good deeds and doing, and helping people. And I'm hoping even dialogues, if a kid, maybe he is never going to be somebody that's super open to ideas, but simply practicing being open to ideas might make them a little better, or at least better prepare them for our campuses, because God knows when you get to campus, you're going to meet people that you don't agree with, so there's, I'm a big fan of, I'd like them to do things for the right reasons, but if when we tell people these are good things to do just in general, like being nice and kind, if you're not really that kind, but you're kind all the time, maybe it'll start to get good at it and you'll do it more often.
There you go. It's a great point, Jim. And we have some great questions coming in here now, and so I'll throw it out to the group, and whoever would like to, feel free to take it up. The first one we have here is, how will the platform handle the distinction between discomfort and hate speech, right? Who gets to define what civility is, and just in general, right? How are you all thinking about judging between folks really trying to push the line of being able to disagree respectfully versus something that will come across as a little bit more aggressive or something that you're not looking for in applicants?
You might actually be the best one to answer that from a technological standpoint, Matt. But from our standpoint, I mean, there are what I'm looking forward to is the peer reviews, and that it's not just one conversation too; it's multiple conversations. So for me, it's less about how did that one conversation go, and did I push it over? Did I push too much at that one time? But kind of how did it all go? And it's about attitude too. Like you can have a very extreme is probably not the right word, but you can have a pretty powerful viewpoint, and there are ways to present it that do not have to be off-putting, and that you can that are leave you open to a conversation. But my peers, I'm sorry.
Well, and I think what is interesting here is students are going to be getting feedback on the way those conversations happen. And so it actually would be really good to know that they took the feedback in and maybe adjusted in the next round. I mean, that's kind of the way this happens. So Jim actually kind of said this, we're going to look over the long haul on how all these go. And, does a student adjust and ultimately get to a point where the dialogue is civil, and even if there's not agreement, but there's open dialogue, or do they just double down and not make any changes to their style, or not? And that's the kind of thing that we'll be able to see through the platform.
Awesome. Really appreciate that. Another good one here. Folks are trying to understand, what are some effective strategies that your institution uses on campus to try to promote this respectful dialogue among students who have different views?
I'll tackle this one briefly, and I think it's sort of an offshoot of what I mentioned before, which is that I think it's good to have some sense of boundaries and principles that guide the discussion. There is a duration for the conversation. There are some general rules for when a speaker is speaking, that you allow them to finish their thought or present their point of view. You don't shout them down. That if you wish to convey your thoughts or your perspective, that there will be a time and place for that. Not everyone can talk at the same time, and it's important to wait and listen, digest, and then respond. So I think it's really helpful to have some general rules, but then to also make it clear that that we promote respectful dialogue and conversation, and that we'll always provide a platform for it, so that there is no monopoly on one perspective. There will always be opportunities for people to share and talk and get together.
So we actually have people, when they decide that they're going to come to my institution, that they sign something that is committed to conversing respectfully and respecting ideas that are different than their own. And that may be something that it's obviously an inclination that needs to be kind of honed and grown when you're in college, and we can start that journey even as early as orientation, where there are kind of trainings and leadership models and to how to converse with one another, and to make sure that you do that, as Logan was saying, that listening, but not only listening, but you're absorbing it, and you may disagree and respect. How do you respectfully disagree while still valuing what that other person has said, which I think all of our schools teach in different ways, but I think that goes into the classroom in the way that the faculty also really encourage people to converse in some of the, particularly in some of the smaller seminar classes that you definitely are going to be taking at our institutions in addition to others. And so the faculty could go through a teaching and learning training in order to make sure that is occurring to the best ability. I mean, we're not, at all of our schools, as we said, we're not perfect, and sometimes we're all on that range that you asked us to rate. But what is it, I think, important is that we care about that. It's a core value of our institution, and so we try to build that understanding and base from the very beginning.
Awesome. Thank you, Logan and Jessica. That's really great. Another good one here, right? People of different views can have discussion respectfully, but folks are curious how you actually agree on a course of action if you're on very different sides of a particular issue. How do you think about how this can help folks kind of inform their final viewpoint or future viewpoint?
Never a final viewpoint, is there, Stu?
I was going to say the same thing. Right. It doesn't necessarily lead to a course of action other than refining your own view. I mean, the hope is, as we talked about several times over time, over this session, is that dialogue, the whole point of it's not just to convince somebody of your own view. It's actually to sharpen what you think. I mean, that's kind of, and so, hopefully people will engage and hear something that they learn that makes them update their own views on things. And that's kind of the hope. No other action is necessary, but that's the hope that's the outcome that we're hoping for here.
And actually, I'll weigh in really fast on this one. My flight's taking a little more time. One thing I've seen, what we're talking about here is absolutely what Stu just said. We just want people, it's okay. You're not trying to convince each other. It's okay to leave the conversation disagreeing just as much as you entered it, but you heard the other, you understand the other side a little bit better. But one thing I do see, especially in like a work environment, and it happens in a school environment too, where you're working on a group project. It might not be a big disagreement about taxation or some big public policy issue, but it could be a disagreement about what the project should be about. There could be a decision that's happening that the administration of the school has to make. At an organization all the time, people are going to disagree about things. And we use a term, and a lot of organizations use this term, disagree and commit. And, we like to see people who can voice their disagreement. We want to be in an environment where we can. But then sometimes someone has to make a decision. You have to move forward. And it's not always easy to commit, but that's another muscle too, to say, look, okay, I didn't agree. I would have picked something different, but I get that someone has to make this decision, and I'm going to help them make that decision a success. I think is something that we look for in the workforce, and I'm sure people want to look for that on campuses too.
Sal, those are the most important and best admissions officers on our campuses, because you can imagine people become very attached to some of their applicants, and in the end, we only have whatever number of spots we have. And when the decision comes that a student isn't getting in, you need to have that admissions officer be able to get on board with, okay, these are the kids we have, and let's go get them.
Yeah, if I could just add also, I mean, I think that a word that often people, when you're talking about civil discourse, we're talking a lot about listening and respect and that kind of thing. But it's about collaboration as well. I mean, and that is a really important quality for that. And so, I mean, that some collaboration means sometimes you have to step down a little bit, and then and step up at some time, but you work together even though you disagree. And I think that when everyone digs in deeper in dialogues, that's really one of the qualities that are looking for in terms of the peer review and that kind of thing, collaboration, which will help with that decision making.
No, it's a wonderful reminder that these dialogues, collaboration, they don't end with just the admissions process. And this ties really nicely into the next question we have here, which is, do you believe that fostering dialogue skills in high school could actually help to reduce some of the polarization that we are seeing both nationally and globally? And if so, how?
Yeah, I'll jump in here as well, because I think, Jim made this point that, sometimes you have to start the conversation. You have to start these conversations somewhere at some time, and starting those conversations in high school with people who are your peers, in a safe environment where you feel like you can share more of your perspective and hear more from someone else who has a different perspective, I think that's the first step, because when you get to college, there will be more of that. When you get out of college, there will be even more of that. And so you have to start sometime, and this is a great time to get started on it, because you're already at this level, surrounded by people now with this platform who are going to be from all over the world, who have very different perspectives. And so I would say this presents an incredible opportunity for students to begin this process and just learn how it goes. I mean, all of us on, at least on the screen right here, are adults who have said things that we wish in the past that we wish we had said a little bit differently, or things that we didn't say that we wish we had said, or some combination thereof. But that comes with time, and it comes with practice, and it comes with understanding, and it comes with hearing how other people talk about and present ideas. And so practice is a real thing with civil discourse. And so I would say, get started. There's no reason to hesitate.
Amazing. There's a ton of wisdom there. And I think looking at the time, it might be also the best way for us to close things out. Thank you to all of our incredible Deans of Admissions and Sal for joining us today. We just have a few closing thoughts here. Just first off, thank you everyone so much for joining us today and taking the time to start this dialogue, as Logan was mentioning, around how do we actually become a world in which we can speak to one another about the things that we might not fully agree on, right? We hope that this conversation has really sparked your interest in how you and other students can engage more thoughtfully and respectfully with one another, especially on some of those most pressing and complex issues. And as has kind of been mentioned throughout this conversation, that's really what we're working towards at Schoolhouse, right? Through this new dialogues program. We want to be able to bring high school students together in this structured one-on-one Zoom conversations where these students can hold different perspectives on controversial topics and really be able to hear each other out, practice other skills, and be able to engage in a growing world. Each of these sessions is designed to really foster empathy and curiosity and respectful disagreement, right? All of these skills, as we've heard, are going to be critical for both college readiness and engaged citizenship down the road. So we want to call out basically two main ways that you as a student can get involved. The dialogue events, which happen one-off, are a very low commitment way to just try the program out and get comfortable in these one-on-one conversations. And on the other side of that, we have dialogues clubs that meet twice a month, dive deeper into some of these complex issues. They're led by these trained tutors, and our clubs use discussion guides that are going to help folks really intentionally practice this respectful disagreement and get the most out of this ongoing discussion. So if you're a student or you know one or are curious about these conversations, we'd love to have you join. You can learn more and sign up by either scanning this QR code on the screen or by clicking the link in the chat, schoolhouse.world/dialogues. So thank you again, everyone, for taking the time with us today. We hope to see you in a Schoolhouse Dialogue very soon. Thanks, everyone.